We should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. Everyone should be well. Everyone should be safe. Yesterday we learned the Mishnah and Chaf Gimel Amud Beis. Mishnah spoke about a person that married two women, and the assumption is here, what's the case? Where, well, he doesn't know which one he married. He married one of two sisters. Not that he married two women. He married one out of two women, but he doesn't know which one it was. So the Gemara says, Mishnah said, because they're sisters, so he has to give a get. You can't just choose one of them, because you're not allowed to marry, the person's not allowed to marry his wife's sister. So the Gemara says now, Shema Mina, Kedushin Shein Mesur and Labia Havi Kedushin. Why does he have to give a get? So machlekes in Masechta Kedushin. That's machlekes Abaye and Rava. If a person marries a woman that he'll never be able to consummate the marriage. So is that considered a marriage at all? So Abaye says that it is a marriage, and Rava says that it's not a marriage, which means that according to Rava, you don't have to give a get. Over here, that's exactly our case. It's Kedushin She'ein Mesur and Labia. This is a marriage that he'll never be able to consummate because he doesn't know which of the sisters he's married. So it's an impossible marriage to ever be completed. Is that considered a real marriage at all, even to start with? Is it even considered a Kedushin? So Rava says no. So the Gemara says, Shema Mina Kedushin She'ein Mesur and Labia Havi Kedushin. From our Mishnah, you have a kasha on Rava. Rava says that you don't need a get. Our Mishnah says you do need a get. Rava, of course, doesn't argue with the Mishnah. So the Gemara answers, here we're talking about where originally when he made the Kedushin, he knew which one he was marrying. It was only afterwards that it got mixed up. Over there, what was their machlekes about when a person marries one of two sisters? That's where he sent a shliach to say, to make the Kedushin for him. He can use a shliach for the wedding. So he says, give one of the so-and-so's daughters a ring for me. Doesn't know which one. He didn't say which one. The shliach doesn't know which one he gave it to. The girls don't say which one it is. And so he never knew. That was Kedushin She'ein Mesur and Labia, even originally. Over here, what we're saying is that it was Mesur and Labia. It was possible to consummate the marriage. Just he forgot. The Kedushin was effective in our case, even according to Rava. Dekanami, I'll prove it to you that that's the case. The Ktani, because it taught Ve'ena Yedeya. Our Mishnah says Ve'ena Yedeya. He doesn't know which one he was Mekadesh. V'lektani Ve'ena Yedua. Ena Yedua means it was never known. That would be a different case if it was never known. You see where we are? We're on 23. Okay, Shema Mina, we see from this that it was a case over here where he actually knew originally, but now he forgot, and that's why he has to give both of them a get. If he never knew, he wouldn't even have to give a get, according to Rava. Umar says, Maika Mashmalan. What's the chiddush? Of course, he's not allowed to marry his wife's sister. Well, the Gemara says, Seifet strichale. It is actually necessary, because when it comes to the discussion about if the person if this person that married two sisters passes away, and he has a brother, so how does the chalitza and the yibam work? That's a whole discussion. So that's why we needed to quote this case, because we needed to conclude it with that complicated discussion. It says, Meis. The person passed away, the person that gave the shliach the money for Kedushin, and then he passed away. And he has and he has one brother. That brother has to do chalitza on both sisters. Okay. Let's say he had two brothers, the person that passed away. So one of the brothers does chalitza first, and then the second one is allowed to do yibam. And what the chiddush of our Mishnah is that dafka mechlatz v'hadar yivume. First chalitza and then yibam. Aval yivume b'reish halai, but you can't do yibam first. Why? Why can't you do yibam first? The other brother will do, the other wife, the other sister rather, will get a chalitza. So in both cases, both sisters will be covered, either one. So the Gemara says the kapaga b'chayse kukase. You have a problem. Let's say the yibam is being performed on the sister of the real wife. We had a prohibition of marrying, rabbinic prohibition, of marrying the sister of the zakuka, of the one that you're supposed to marry. It's as if it's his wife's sister. It's not really, it's his quasi-wife's sister. So, in which he wasn't supposed to marry. So that's why chalitza is done first. That means it's not really his wife. Then he can do yibam on the sister. Okay. Next case of the Mishnah said Shnaim shekitru shtei achayos. We had two people that were not related, two men. They married two sisters, Rachel and Leah. And what we said over there was each one doesn't know who he was married to. So, and then they passed away. Well, before that, if they wanted what they needed to do, because they didn't know who their wife was, and there were two sisters, he couldn't just pick one and go, because it could be his wife's sister, which he's not allowed to be married to. So we said he had to give a get to both women. Let's say he passed away and each one had a brother. So chalitza had to be done on both women by both brothers. It goes like this. Shema mina, we see from this, kedushin shem masur and labia have a kedushin. Why does each fellow need to give a get? There were two sisters, according to Rava. Kedushin shem masur and labia, a kedushin that can never be consummated, is not even a kedushin. If it can never be finished, it's not a kedushin. The Gemara answers, same case. Originally, he knew which one he married. It's only he forgot. So at the time of the kedushin, it was a good kedushin. It was a good betrothal, and it's only now that he can't consummate it. So that's why he has to give a get. But originally, it was an acceptable kedushin. So we're talking about where he recognized. Exactly like we said in the first case of the Mishnah, so to the second case of the Mishnah, it's a Eina Yedeya. He doesn't know now. It's not a Eina Yedua. It's not that he never knew. Shema Mina. Okay. What chiddush do you have in this case? It says Seifet Strichale. You have a chiddush at the end, which is Mesu, that if these two fellows, not related, passed away, they're just wives or sisters. You just don't know which one it is. And over there we had a case that if one of these fellows has one brother and the other one has two brothers. So the way it works is like this. The one that had one brother needs to do chalitza on both sisters. He doesn't know which one was his brother's wife. So do chalitza on both. But Hashnayim, the one that has two brothers, one brother can do chalitza on each. But let's say one brother wants to marry. Let's say they both want to marry these two sisters. They're allowed to if we wouldn't have had this scenario. The problem is that if you try to do yibam first, what's going to happen is if one of the brothers does yibam on one of the sisters, that may be the person that he's supposed to marry his sister, which he's not supposed to do. It's called a chayse kukase. So the first brother that does chalitza that's would want to do yibam has to do chalitza. He can't do yibam. He can't marry his wife's his intended wife's sister, the sister of his zakuka. So chalitza comes first. But the second one can already do yibam because mimanavshach. If the sister was the one he was supposed to marry, so that's been resolved by the brother's yibam. And if this is the one he's supposed to marry, well, that's exactly what he did. He married her. So the Gemara says, Pshita, Hainu Reisha, what are you telling me? That's exactly the same story of the Reisha. The Gemara says, well, this is slightly different. Because maybe we should say that you should not do yibam at all in the second case. Why? Because if one of the brothers, one of those two is allowed to do yibam, maybe the other brother, the other husband's single brother, also wants to do yibam. So it says Kamash Malan comes to teach us that Dafka Mechlatz Vadi Yivume, that Chalitza has to come first. Aval Yivumi Bereishalai, the Kapaga Biyavam Alashuk. You can't do Yibam first. Why? What would happen if you do Yibam first? if one of these fellas that was married to one of these sisters, he says, I'm going to do Yibam. So he does Yibam. Problem was that woman, that Leah, that he did Yibam on, turned out was the other fellow's wife. So he's now marrying a woman that didn't have chalitza. So this brother can only do chalitza. He can't do Yibam. Let's say the two brothers did chalitza. Would he be allowed to do Yibam? The answer is no. Because if the two brothers did chalitza, so they resolved the Yevamos Daf problem. Okay, but the problem is the zika of the wife, of the real wife to him. We don't know which one it is. So if he would be doing Yibam, he may end up marrying his brother's wife's sister, which was now to him is Achaysa Kukasa. It's the woman that he's supposed to marry. It's the sister. So he can never do Yibam. And that's what we're learning here. That's the chiddush of this case, that he can never do Yibam. Could have thought maybe we should make a gzeira that even the two brothers shouldn't do Yibam, shouldn't be allowed Yibam because he's not allowed to do Yibam. You say, no, the two brothers can. He can't. Let's say each of these men that were married to these two sisters had two brothers. We said you can crisscross. Each one does chalitza on one of them, and then they can do Yibam on the other one. Yeah, it's possible. How would that work? Because mimanafshach. Now each one does chalitza to both, and then Yibam could be done to the other one. No, that doesn't make sense. Because then it was resolved. What was our issue? Our issue was he can't marry the sister of the one that he's supposed to be marrying. So what the brother did chalitza on that one. So he's allowed to marry the sister. Maybe it's Yevamos Daf. Maybe it's the other fella's deceased brother's widow, and she didn't have chalitza yet. No, she did have chalitza. Basically, they crisscross. This fellow does chalitza on this wife. This fellow does chalitza on this wife, and then the brother is allowed to marry the one that chalitza was the opposite one, the one that chalitza was done on. He's allowed to do you. Okay. The Gemara says, Hasu lamali hainu hach. It's exactly the same case. I mean, you complicated it a little bit, but the logic is the same. It says, it could have thought maybe they may end up doing Yibam without chalitza, because chalitza was done by the other brother. It says, no, kamashmalan, that we're not concerned about that. Now the Gemara has an interesting question. Yeah, in the first cases, we're finishing Chav Gimel. In the first cases, we didn't actually have two brothers doing Yibam. In the first cases, we only had either chalitza entirely or one brother doing Yibam. Now that you have two doing Yibam, maybe we could have done both Yibam without the chalitza. So kamash malan that you always need chalitza first. The Gemara now asks, the Gemara misses the point that it wants to ask, but it just gives you the introduction. Over here, we concluded that if Yibam was done before Chalitza, it's not a problem. He can stay married. Why? Maybe he married the sister of the one that he was supposed to marry, which he wasn't allowed to do. We say, don't worry about that. You know why? Because when the brother stepped in and did chalitza on that other woman, so that's oiker lemafreya, that it's not the zakuka, and the marriage of the brother is working. So he doesn't have to get divorced as long as chalitza was done on the sister afterwards. Okay. The problem is that we have a case like this. Rav Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Ah, very nice. Now, Reuven and Shimon are married to Rachel and Leah. Leah and Rachel, and that's what we put it always. Reuven to Leah, Shimon to Rachel. Anyway, Reuven and Shimon pass away. Well, now Levi and Yehuda have to do chalitza or yibam on them. Immediately, there's a problem of each one doing chalitza, of each one doing yibam. Why? Because when he tries to do yibam, when Levi tries to do yibam on Leah, he has an obligation to do yibam on Rachel also, because that's Shimon's wife. That's his other brother. So Leah is
both women died?
No, the women are alive. Both men died. Reuven and Shimon.
One of each set?
The two husbands of the two sisters died, and there's two more brothers. There's four brothers here. So the two remaining brothers have to do yibam on the widows. The problem is that each one of those widows has a sister that also has to do yibam. So each sister is achay sekukasei. So over there we said that you were not allowed to marry either one. You had to do chalitza, and that was the case. Only chalitza. Let's say Levi does yibam, so they have to get divorced. Over here, you didn't say they had to get divorced. We had the same story. We had two fellas with two sisters. We said that they weren't supposed to do chalitza first. They weren't supposed to do yibam first. But if they did yibam first, it's not a problem. They could stay married. 1 second. Why over there do they in Kansu it says Mitzian? Yeah, the Gemara doesn't finish that line, but that's what it really wants to ask. The Gemara says Hachiashta. 1 second. The Gemara says Hassam. In that case, there's a huge difference. The basic difference that the Gemara is like not spelling out the point, but the basic difference is that over there was a definite prohibition. Over here, it's all a doubt. It's very possible that he married the right woman. It's just a 50-50 chance. So we say you don't get married first, just in case. But if he does get married, all right, the other one did chalitza, it resolves the problem after the fact. But over here, there's a definite prohibition. It says like this, if we hold that the prohibition is because of a zika. What was the problem of him marrying Leah, doing yibam on Leah? He says, well, he had zika he had an attachment to Rachel, which is the sister of the one that he's trying to marry. It's not allowed to marry his wife's sister. And it's achay sekukasei. Now, what happens is that, why don't we say that it gets resolved? When Yehuda does yibam on Rachel, or chalitza on Rachel, that frees up the sister. It's not achay sekukasei anymore. So let them stay married. The answer is that once there was a prohibition ever, she never becomes permitted. She never goes back to, and since at one moment in time, there was Rachel and Leah were prohibited to Levi and Yehuda, it doesn't get resolved afterwards. So why by us do we say it does get resolved? Because by us it was just a doubt. Over there, it was definite a zika. Over here, we didn't know if he's marrying the right one. Okay, so if it's according to the one yesh zika, so yesh zika, you have that problem and which never gets resolved. A prohibited woman doesn't become permitted by the once the prohibition takes effect, it stays forever. That's why the tzara and all it's always prohibited. There was one other logic over there. Why chalitza was supposed to be performed. We said that he should do chalitza because let's say he does yibam. Then if Yehuda passes away, then he won't be able to do yibam on Rachel because he's already married to Leah. Can't marry two sisters. So do chalitza. No, you don't do chalitza either because it's a sister. You don't do chalitza on a sister. So it's going to be mevatel mitzvahs yibam. So what we say is do chalitza on Rachel. Each one has to do chalitza. And that way, if one of them passes away, then you'll be able to do yibum. You see, chalitza is at least not avoiding the mitzvah entirely, it's resolving it. So at least that's enough. You have a problem over there. So therefore, we said that you need to do chalitza and not get married. But but over here, you can always say that you married the right one, because it was a doubt which sister was married, the brother was married to anyway. Okay. And the Mishnah says that if these two brothers of the deceased do yibum on the two sisters, so they can stay married. Tani Sheila taught afilu shneim kayanim, even if they're both kayanim. Now a kayan does yibum, not a kayan gadol, but a kayan does yibum. The problem is that in this case, we don't know if he's really doing yibum on the right one. This may be the other fellow's wife from the other marriage, which chalitza was performed on. And now he's just marrying a woman that had chalitza. It's a divorcee. She's a widow before, but now she's a divorcee from the brother. How could they stay married? My time, what's the reason? Chalutza derabbanan, v'safek chalutza legazer berabbanan. The Gemara says she's not really a divorcee. She's just a chalutza. She wasn't really married to this fellow. It was just the zika. He got rid of it by chalitza. And that's only a rabbinic divorce. And now we don't know if it's the wrong one. And maybe it's the right one. Well, for rabbinic reasons, we don't tell them to get divorced. Chalutza derabbanan, the Gemara asks, that's only rabbinic. But Tanya, but we have a brisa grusha that the kohen is not allowed to marry a divorcee. How do we know he's not allowed to marry a chalutza either? Talmud Leimer v'isha says, and the wife. We learn it from a pasuk. It's a isha grusha me isha la yikachu. It says he's not allowed to marry this woman either. That extra word tells me that he can't marry a chalutza. That's a biblical law. So the Gemara answers midrabbananu across machta b'almahu. It's actually not biblical. It's only rabbinic, and the pasuk is just a support. Okay, zu gesund. Big chiddush, huh? Wow. We have a new Mishnah. Mishnah says, mitzvah begadol yabim. Which brother goes first to do yibum? Yeah. Let's say Reuven passes away. He has a wife, Leah. So who should do yibum? Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun. Says the oldest one. We're going to see that the way the Gemara is going to learn this is really, or at least at the beginning, it's going to learn is that Shimon passed away. Shimon was married to Rachel. So Reuven does yibum, and not Levi and Yehuda, only the oldest one. We'll see. Vim kadam hakatan zacha. But if Levi or Yehuda decided to do yibum, zacha, they're married. Okay. You know, there's a big inheritance there also. Besides, maybe they like this sister-in-law. It could have been reason why maybe they wanted the mitzvah. Whatever it is. Okay. In this case, Shimon was married to Rachel.
You're just using these names, right?
Yeah.
There's no reference.
No, well, I am referring to that Reuven, Shimon, Levi, they're all brothers.
Yeah, but Rachel's the mother.
Rachel would be the mother, yeah. Yeah, I'm borrowing those names because we don't know the names of the wives.
Consider you got a lot of names.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Taner Rabbanan, starting the brisa. V'haya b'char. We're going through the pasuk over here. The pasuk says, "V'haya b'char she'teled yakam al shemachiv." The firstborn that is born from this levirate marriage will replace the deceased brother's name. I don't know, Yibam. Levirate is English for Yibam. I don't know. It's these words that someone made them somewhere, like phylacteries. Someone made that. I remember I was always interested to know who made the word Gentile. The Goyim, it's an English word for Goyim, right? So who made that word? The Goyim made it. We made it. Like how did that come about? We already had a word. I assume they weren't interested in having a new word. Anyway, okay. The pasuk says "V'haya b'char." That's referring to the child. Mikan shemitzvah begadol yabim. The Gemara doesn't learn that the b'char is a very interesting Gemara. B'char asher teled. The firstborn that's born will replace the name of the deceased. The Gemara is learning it. No, it's the b'char of the brother. Shimon passed away. Reuven does the yibum. It's like out of context. Okay, let's go further in the pasuk. Asher teled, that is born. Prat lailanis. That means that if she was if the wife of Shimon could not have children, then you don't need to do yibum. Shein yeledas. Okay. Yokam al shimachiv replaces the name of the brother. Lenachala, for inheritance. Atam lenachala, you say that it's for inheritance. Yosef Karner say Yosef. Maybe it doesn't mean inheritance. Maybe it's the literal meaning of the pasuk. He comes on the name of the deceased brother, which means he has to be born. He has to be named at his birth. If the brother's name was Yosef, you call him Yosef. Yochanan Karner say Yochanan. Call him Yochanan. The Gemara says, "Nemer kan Yaakam al shemachav nemer la'ala and al shem acheihem yikru benachlasim." It says by Ephraim and Menashe that they'll be like one of their brothers. They'll be like one of Yosef's brothers. That was Yaakov in his blessing, was giving them that higher status, that Yosef's children should become like one of the Shvatim. So it says over there it's referring to inheritance. Al shem acheihem. And this is al shem achiv. So that phrase al shem achiv doesn't mean that they replace the name, that you get called Yosef or something. No, it means inheritance. Okay, it's for inheritance, not for the actual name. You don't blot out. His name should not be wiped out. This would exclude. Is this referring to if the deceased was a saris, or if this is referring to the deceased was a saris? If the deceased was a eunuch, wasn't able to have children anyway, so then Yibam is not performed. Okay. Yeah, you would need to know that. Amar Rava. Rava says, even though in the whole Torah we always say that you can't take a pasuk out of its literal translation, but over here, because of Gzeir Shava, Al Shem Achayim, because we learned from the pasuk with the tribes that the Ephraim and Menashe will come into as inheritance. So we changed the pshat in Yokam al Shemachiv that the child will replace the name of the deceased brother. We changed the pshat. Doesn't mean name, it means inheritance. Gemara challenges Rava's statement. You ever thought that that's really what it meant? Let's take a look at the pasuk and try it your way. Try it the other way, like play it out and see what you're going to come out with. You'll never be able to resolve it anyway. So it's not the Gzeir Shava that's changing the pshat. You couldn't resolve it even without the Gzeir Shava. Why? It's a problematic pasuk. Laman Kamazer Rachmana. Who is the Eibishter telling that the name should be replacing? Should that the name needs to change? That he needs to have a different name. Liyabim. Is he telling to the Liyavam? Are you telling Liyavam? Yokam al Shem Achicham Yibayle. He should replace the name of your brother, not of his brother. Your brother. Who's giving the name here? Ila Beidina, maybe the best is supposed to give the name. and we're saying of his brother. Yakam al Shei Ache Aviv Nibayilei. Who they're giving the name to? It should be the brother of his father. They're giving the name to the child. He should get the name of his father's brother, not of his brother, because the Bezdin's doing it. Dilma Hachi Kamar. Maybe, but the pshat is Hachi Kamar lu Rachmana leBezdin. Hashem is telling the Bezdin, Imru le Yavam, tell the Yavam, Yakam al Shemachit, that he should give the name of his child of his brother. Actually fits. That would work. So the Gzeir Shava is what's changing the pshat, not the simple pshat in the pasuk. The simple pshat in the pasuk we could have worked out, but it's the Gzeir Shava that's changing it. Okay.
That can't go on the woman if she's the one leaving it on.
Over here it was the Bezdin telling the father that you should name the child because of as the name of the brother. But the Gemara says that we don't. That's not the pshat because of the Gzeir Shava.
On the actual wife because it's
Yeah, right. It would be her husband, her deceased husband. Okay. Yeah. Now the Gemara says, "Hashta de Amrit Kra begadol ksiv." Let's go back and take a look at this. You told me that the pasuk is referring to that the oldest brother needs to do the yibam. Maybe it's actually the halacha that only Reuven can do yibam. Levi cannot do yibam. Levi is a younger brother. Only Reuven. But let's say Levi passed away. Only Reuven can do yibam. Shimon can't do yibam. He's not a bachar. Maybe that's the pshat. It says, "V'haya b'char asher teled," and we learned that b'char is referring to the brother.
The sister was always.
Yeah. What if there's a sister's eldest? That's a good point. It's called the b'char shaitan, right? It wouldn't be a real b'char. That's what the Gemara is asking. The Gemara says, "Im kain eishasachiv shlei haya balami demiat rachman alamali." I have a problem with that because the Gemara learns out that if there was a brother that was born later, he doesn't do yibam. If the only one that does yibam is a bechar, so of course a brother born later doesn't do yibam. It's impossible for him to be a bechar because the bechar, even if there's only one other brother, the bechar passed away. There's more brothers, but it doesn't matter. He's not the bechar. There's no. It's an impossibility. So why do we need a whole limud to say that a brother that was born later doesn't do yibam? Of course he doesn't do yibam. He's not a bechar. So parach ravachai ve'ema lamute buchra de'ema. There is a possibility. Maybe the brother that didn't come into the world yet until the brother passed away was the firstborn of the mother. She had another child. Not the wife, not the widow. Not the widow. Talking about the deceased brother, his parents. His mother has another child. And it's a firstborn. The father had Reuven and Shimon, okay, together with Leah. Okay, now the father has a new wife. She was never married yet, Rachel. And her firstborn is Levi. So maybe he could do Yibam, he's the firstborn. So the Gemara is saying that there is a possibility that it could be a firstborn, but the problem is he wasn't around when Reuven passed away or when Shimon passed away, whichever brother we're dealing with here. So no, it's the same father. Same father,
Mother.
but the mother is the firstborn. The Gemara says, "Ahum leimatzasamrit." Even benachla talar rachmana, nachla min ha'av lei min ha'im. You can't tell me that. We're always talking about inheritance here, because when it says firstborn, it would need to be from the father, because the whole concept here is inheritance, and the mother's family, it doesn't inherit. Okay. The mother's family, yeah, the inheritance doesn't go through the mother's family, it only works through the father's. The Gemara says maybe we could say Kiyaka Bachar Tiskaya Mitzvah Sibam. Kilaka Bachar like Tiskaya Mitzvah Sibam, a very interesting pshat. If there's a Bachar, then Yibam could be done by even other brothers. But if there's no Bachar, then there's no Mitzvah Sibam. Then you don't do Yibam. V'haya Bachar. It says only if there's a firstborn. So if Shimon passed away, and then Reuven is alive, and Levi is alive, so Levi can also do Yibam, even though if he was born later, then the Torah tells me that he doesn't do Yibam. That would exclude him. But if he was born while Shimon was alive, then he can do Yibam. But if Reuven was the one that passed away, Shimon can't do Yibam, and it's pointless to tell me that Levi can't, who was born later. No one does Yibam. Amar Kra, the pasuk says, pasuk says that if there are two brothers in the world and one of them dies, it doesn't say which one. Doesn't mean only the younger one died and leaves a bachar. Even if the older one died and doesn't leave a bachar and doesn't leave a bachar brother alive, that means Yibam should be done, even if it wasn't the younger brother that died leaving a bachar. The ema demis katan, vam rachman al yabam bachar. Maybe it means only if the younger one dies that the older one does Yibam. It says Hamiyat Rachmana Eshesachar Shlei Balam, and that's impossible. Because the Torah tells me that if there's a brother that was born later, he doesn't do Yibam. If it was always a Bachar, you can't have an older brother born later. Yeah. Although when kids fight about who's older and who's not, sometimes it changes. I know I was born later. Just because I was born later doesn't mean I'm not older. Okay. Okay. So the ema kileka bachar kadam katan zacha v'ika bachar kadam katan lei zacha. Maybe what it means is that if there is no bachar, then the younger one could take the precedence. Let's say Reuben passed away, leaving his wife Leah, and Shimon, and we know that Shimon and Levi are supposed to be able to do Yibam. And if Levi goes ahead and does it first, so that's acceptable. But let's say Shimon passed away. Reuben's supposed to do Yibam. If Levi goes ahead and does the marriage, after the fact, is it acceptable? So we said, let's say maybe not. Maybe because Reuben takes such precedence that Levi's Yibam doesn't work. It says, it says if brothers are together. And that means that however it happens, it's always going to be equal. It means whether it's Shimon that does or Levi that does, it's always going to be equal. Whoever passed away it's not going to make a difference. Maybe if there is a Bachar, then you look for the older one. If there's no Bachar, then it doesn't have to be the older one. You can go to Dan Naftali, Gad, Asher, Yosef, Binyamin. It could be anyone. It says Allah Matani Abaya Kashisha. Why did Abaya Kashisha teach mitzvah begadol yabim loy ratza holchen etzel achav hakatan? The oldest one's supposed to do yibam. If he doesn't want, then you go to the next oldest. It's supposed to be hakatan mimenu, the one that's younger than him. Yeah, it's missing that word, but Taisus sort of adds it in there. Loy ratza, if he doesn't want chayzen etzel gadol, then you go back and you force the older one if the younger one doesn't want. So it says kibachar. We're suggesting that maybe when do you do this? That's only if there is a bachar. But if there's no bachar, then you don't have to do this. You can just go straight to the youngest and start like that. So it says no, like the firstborn. Ma bachar bacharasi garmalai af gadol gedolasi garmalai. Just like the firstborn, it goes back to him, and he's the one that's obligated. The obligation ultimately falls back on him. So too, the oldest one, the obligation ultimately falls back on the oldest one, even if he's not the firstborn. Maybe when the Bechar does the Yibam, he gets the whole inheritance. But if it's not the Bechar, then he doesn't get the inheritance. Maybe only if Reuven does Yibam. But if Levi does Yibam, he doesn't get the inheritance. It says the logic is that he replaces the brother. And he did replace the brother. So why are you not giving him his brother's inheritance?
It could also be going on the son who's going to be born. He's going to be taking over the inheritance of his father.
Yeah. But in the interim, it's this brother that gets it. Yeah. Vela Bechar, Kaya Rachmana Lamai Hilchasa. So then why does it say Bechar? It should say Gadol. It's the oldest one that does the Yibam. It says Ma Bechar in the Neitel Breike B'Machzak Apai in the Neitel Breike B'Machzak. When it comes to inheritances, you see, the Bechar gets a firstborn inheritance. The Bechar gets a double portion. When does he get that double portion? That's only by possessions that were there at the time of the death. But if there's possessions that are due to the deceased but didn't arrive yet, they only come in later, so he doesn't get a double portion of those. That he splits equally with the brothers. So too, the Yibam. Sorry. They find out they won the lottery, right? It's an old ticket. Or he had investments or something that something happened to them, and they, whatever. So also the Yibam doesn't get the portion of the brother that didn't arrive yet. He doesn't get the two portions. He gets his own portion and his brother, the deceased brother's portion. He doesn't get that only if it was around at the time when of the death of the Yibam, but not the time of the Yibam. He would get it, I guess, but not if it comes later. If it comes later, he's just an individual. Okay.
Interesting. The whole Shakal Tire is not bringing out the whole point. The whole point of Yibam is to leave a remembrance of the brother.
Right.
The Chai, not the Chai, that's the whole.
Right.
That's the main point of the mitzvah. To keep.
Right. But nevertheless, I think what the Torah is telling us is that when you have a mitzvah, the oldest one leads the way. Takes responsibility. Takes responsibility.
About the nachul, forgetting about the main point is to remember the brother.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that I hear.
Money.
Okay, this Mishnah is actually probably the most relevant. Big discussions in Besdin every single day based on this Mishnah. Someone that's suspected of living with a non-Jewish maid, and then she gets freed. So the suspected person, the guy that was always hanging out with her, is not allowed to marry her after she converts. When she gets freed, she converts. And then here's where it becomes relevant. Let's say Jewish man, I don't know, some guy arrives from Israel, and he's suspected of being in love with this girl from South America. Yeah, I'm making it a common scenario. So then the girl converts. He's not allowed to marry her. Yeah, there goes all of that after she converts. Yeah, huge issue. How does this get resolved? This is like it's way too we
spoke about a case similar to this where you became a new person.
Yeah. We'll see in the Gemara. It's quite a. Oh, that's the Gemara's question. How was she even allowed to convert? But if they do get married, they don't have to get divorced. They can remain married. Let's say someone suspected of adultery, living with a married woman, and she was removed from the marriage, from under this marriage. Even if he does marry her, that's a problem. yaitzi. They have to get divorced. He was the suspected adulterer. He's not allowed to then marry her.
He has to give her a get, actually.
Yeah. The Gemara now says
She got divorced and went to marry him.
that was the whole point, right? Yeah, we'll see. What are you saying? If this woman converted and she was in love with some Jewish fellow, is that a good conversion? She didn't convert because of the religion. She converted for marriage. For a mini, we have a problem with that, a contradiction. If a man converts because he likes a Jewish woman, or a woman converts because she likes a Jewish man, let's say someone converts because he wants some sort of wealth, because he wants to join the servants of King Solomon or something, that they were they were well fed, so something like that. So it's not because he read the Bible, it's because he wants some there's ulterior motives. So ein and geirim, it's not a good conversion. That's the words of Reb Nechemia. So how are you telling me converts for marriage? That's a good conversion. So Reb Nechemia Aimer, because Reb Nechemia says, "Echad geir arayis, v'echad geir chalemis, v'echad geir Mordechai v'Esther, ein and geir mach yiskaira bizman hazeh." Converts, like the Kutim, they converted because they felt that if they didn't keep the Torah, they would be eaten by lions. So they didn't really convert because they just converted out of fear.
Yeah.
The lions went away, they went back. If it's chalemis, what does that mean? Someone in a dream told them to convert. Or they converted because of Mordechai and Esther. It says V'rabim meyamei haaretz misyahadim. Misyahadim means they either made believe that they were Jewish or they converted. Why did they convert? Because they saw the Jewish people were so good and powerful and all of that. So that's not a good conversion. Until they convert nowadays. The Gemara says it means they have to convert nowadays. It means as we are nowadays, which means not on a high, we're not doing so great. If you convert nowadays, then we know that you really mean it. But in those times, it wouldn't be acceptable. So how are you telling me conversion for ulterior motives is acceptable? The Gemara says, you don't paskin like Rav Nechemia. Easy teretz. Scratch that. It's not the halacha. The conversion is good. You weren't supposed to convert like that, but the conversion is good. If the conversion is good, so maybe lechatchila that's good. The Gemara says no. We don't want to encourage or support rumors. We don't want to yeah. The question is, I guess, why shouldn't they get married? L'chatchila nami, let them get married. That was the Gemara's question. We say, well, when they get married, then it says, aha, we knew the whole time. We heard the rumors before. So we said, we don't want to support rumors. The person should always be clean from people talking. You don't want to encourage that. So therefore, they shouldn't get married, and they should each marry other people. That way, it doesn't support those rumors. Yeah, the heter today, by the way, there's several heterim, but one of them is that if they were actually living together before, then it's not a rumor. There is no rumor. It's everyone knows what was going on. It's confirmed. Yeah, if it was a rumor, then it's different. So it comes out in the best, and it's actually stricter. If yeshiva bacher shows up with a non-Jewish girl, the best is going to be stricter on him than if that wouldn't be exactly. That's another case. If someone shows up and it wasn't confirmed, so no one knows that we've been dating, no one knows this, we hid it from the family, we're in Crown Heights, but we're keeping it quiet, so then it would be a problem. But if they say, oh no, everyone knows, yeah, we've been going to shul together for 2 years, so then it would be more lenient, because it's confirmed. And then the other point is that there's a heter from the Rambam that if there's a person that's trying to become religious and his only problem is that he's in love with this non-Jewish girl, will allow them to encourage his tshuva, to support the tshuva, will do what's not correct lechatchila, but was acceptable b'diavad, to allow him to re-enter the community and to be part of the community and all of that. Okay.
And he marries.
And she converts, and he's allowed to marry her because he was doing tshuva.
She was the cause of his becoming more religious.
In our cases, it's usually she's pushing him to be more religious. But back then he was trying to do tshuva, he wasn't able to because he was married to this person. Okay, let me just finish this. We don't accept gerim when Mashiach comes. We didn't accept gerim in the days of David or Shlomo. I don't know about all the wives. It's a problem. What's the reason? Amar Rabbi Lazar, Mikra. What's the support for this? It says, Hein Yager. Surely you'll gather. Efes mi'aisi. But without me. Mi gar itcha alacha yipol. Whoever gathers will fall on you, which means in the future. That means you can only do efes mi'aisi when I am not around. That's Shem is saying. When I'm not revealed, that's when you do the conversions. Avalidach, but otherwise, then you don't do the conversions. In the high times, everyone wants to convert. You can't accept them. Okay.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Could you take this heter for the Rambam even further